It is profound, the things that women can get away with, and without any accountability. In some cases, I've even seen women who will defend things like false allegations. And I remember a while back I had come across a video of a gentleman who was working as a train conductor in a mall. And if anyone's kind of familiar with, if you guys have been to a mall in some time, where they have little go-karts that kids can ride in and stuff like that, it was the same thing. And there was a video that I had seen of a woman who was recording him, it was from her end, hurling all these labels at him, false accusations, things that I'm not going to repeat on here, things you would not say to someone who you didn't like. And you could only see it from her end. So, of course, she starts recording. How convenient, right? Of course, she starts recording after she gets the guy aggravated. And she's sitting there hurling these false allegations towards him. And it got me thinking about something that I heard from a friend of mine, where he almost had his life ruined by a woman who he had not even met. He had never contacted this woman. He has never met this woman. And she tried to ruin his life with false allegations. So I want to tell you guys a story. And to start things off, he had told me that he was driving one night down a very kind of well-known street in the neighborhood that we were in. And it's really somewhere that you can't avoid. It connects multiple different neighborhoods and stuff like that in the city. Really the Route 66 of this neighborhood, I'll put it that way. But one night he was pulled over. And they had told him that he can't be on this street. Asked him what he's doing here, and he went about his business. Of course, gave him a little bit of attitude because he was being harassed. But 1 to 2 months later, he gets a knock on his door. And he tells me that it is a restraining order, a temporary restraining order, which, by the way, you don't need any process to get granted. Getting this temporary restraining order from a woman, by the way, who he had never even met before. Now, something I want to make a point of with this friend of mine is he had already gone through a divorce in the past where there was a custody battle involved, where there was false allegations involved. So he already had that they were seeing probably on his record or something, which I don't know if that made a difference in the way they granted it. From what I've seen and heard from other men, they don't need really next to anything to get these kind of things granted, but they granted this temporary protection order. She was trying to say that he was stalking her, harassing her. He was obsessed with her, going to her place of work, which, by the way, was a bar, and my friend doesn't drink, so what would he even be doing in a bar? But making all these false claims. So after he had gotten this temporary no contact order, restraining order, he was living the next number of weeks in complete fear. Because he's thinking, what if he's at the grocery store and this woman, who he's never even seen, doesn't know what she looks like, is by chance in the grocery store? For all he knows, in front of her, in front of him or behind him in the line. And that's no way to live. I mean, he told me that, and I believe him, it was like living in a nightmare. Like, it could not be real. And a number of weeks go by, and he's at a restaurant that he goes to regularly. And he says 2 cops come in the restaurant. They ask him his name, and they detain him and take him outside. Put him in the car, and 10 minutes later, a woman shows up, identifying that it is him. That he's the guy who's been following her, stalking her, by the way, using his social media account to identify him, which he doesn't have her on. Knowing his place of work, knowing all this information about him to identify him. And she was saying that he followed her to this restaurant, which, by the way, she wasn't even at. It took her 10 minutes to get to the restaurant. And he spends a night now being detained. So the next night he gets out, and for the next number of months, what he had told me was that he was dealing with this protection order battle in and out of court throughout the weeks with this woman. And eventually, it got to the point where it was dropped. But I want to make a point of something. After everything was said and done, you think to yourself, well, did he sue her? Is there more to it? And there's not more to it. And that's the problem. This woman got away with these false allegations with trying to ruin this man's life without any accountability. The fact that it was even entertained for this long is a problem. I asked him about things like suing her and stuff like that. And of course, it's not that simple, right? To have to be out of pocket now thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars for lawyer fees and stuff like that. You can't just do that. And from his point of view and me understanding, right? If I was dealing with something that was so traumatic, that was so stressful, I'd want to just be done with it. I want it to just be over with. I wouldn't want to have to think about it again. Even having to go through that. I imagine bringing back memories with his ex-wife and custody battle and stuff like that is not something that he would want to relive. So he had gone about his business after. But now having to live with this negative, this traumatic, this detrimental experience of this woman. And I want to make a point of something too with this video. No matter how you want to put it, there is something seriously wrong with whether it's some, whether it's a lot. There's something seriously wrong with a lot of women. With the way they handle relationships, with the way they deal with certain things, there's certainly something wrong. And even with the hypergamy stuff, the status stuff, things that women care about in relationships a lot of the time nowadays, most of the time I'd even say, certainly under a certain age. Look, if you're someone who is married, you're someone who has a wife, you're happy, you've been married long term, great. I'm glad. But understand something. When young men, but just men in general, see things like this, hear about things like this, false allegations, they're not going to want to take part in it. They're not going to want to date, and you cannot pressure them into doing something they don't want to do if they're choosing to be single. By the way, choosing. I want to emphasize that. Choosing. Not involuntary, like some people want to make others believe. These are guys that just can't get women or whatever. You're going to see a lot more men being aware of stuff like this. And really that's kind of the gift and the curse with the internet, right? Where, yeah, now in a way the cat is out of the bag. Things like this are out there for people, for the world to see. And I want to make a point here too, because people talk about this idea of being lonely or being single. Now, I've said that there's a difference between being lonely and being alone, which there is, right? With loneliness, you can fix it by finding hobbies. If you have even a brother or one or two close friends, someone in your life who you can talk to, you shouldn't feel lonely. But I've seen and heard of real loneliness. I have a friend of mine who was in the Navy, and he was overseas multiple times, but there were points where he had no Wi-Fi, no way to contact his friends and family, nothing to do. And he experienced real loneliness and isolation. And yeah, he said it was not fun. But understand something. Being single and not having to deal with false allegations and stuff like that, you shouldn't feel lonely. What would make you feel lonely is if you go through something like this, potentially lose custody of your kids, get isolated from your family with things like false allegations, which I've seen before. Like I had a long time ago, which I'll make a video on this. Someone who was trying to just isolate me from friends and social circles and stuff like that, which social circles are fake anyway. You're going to feel real loneliness when you deal with a woman like this. You'll feel true loneliness and isolation because they will isolate you from the things that matter. When you're dealing with things like this in and out of court, and you don't have time for hobbies, you don't have time to even go to work in some cases, spend time with your real friends and family, that's going to be loneliness. Don't be naive to stuff like this. I mean, my first time hearing this, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And that's part of the problem, is that a lot of men are naive to this kind of stuff. They think, how could someone do something like this, especially if you're someone who's a good boyfriend, good husband? But that's just the thing. They're going to have that much more incentive to want to corrupt you. And there's a lot of men who are at their breaking point. There's a lot of men who have been close to reaching that breaking point. Imagine your own kids, right, who you raised. Even this friend of mine told me about a son of his who he would rewatch credits of this Disney film. I think it was Treasure Planet over and over and over and over. Things like that you go through and you live through, and to have that stripped away from you is the most depraved thing that I could think of. Okay? I'm someone who was blessed to be able to spend my childhood with both of my biological parents in the home. But even having one of them missing, whether I have one of them or both of them, having one of them missing, it would have been horrible. You have women who are raised with this idea to have disdain towards men, to have disdain towards being a wife, to have disdain towards loyalty. Okay? So they will go out of their way to make a man's life harder. Like when I heard this story, right? It's sad to say, but I think, wow, this is just a girl who probably went through the public school system, who was raised with this disdain towards men. Raised with this disdain towards men, and she was glad to be able to ruin a man's life. Now, he still doesn't know how she even found out about him. He might have just been out and about and saw he was well put together and had a nice car and just decided, yeah, that's the guy I want to go after. That's the guy who I want to ruin his life. It's horrible. It's horrible that a woman can make claims like that, and that it can even be entertained in the first place. And the even sadder thing is it's not talked about a whole lot. It's just not. Understandably, because the men who go through it, it's a very personal thing. To even have to live through it again and talk about it again is not an easy thing to do. You know, that's, again, a big reason why I wanted to make this channel. Because I'm tired of seeing so many good people, so many good men suffer in silence. I'm tired of it. I'm absolutely tired of it. I'm tired of seeing them struggle financially. I'm tired of seeing them struggle with their personal life, with friends of theirs who don't have their best interest. I'm tired of all of it. But when it comes to the relationship stuff, yeah, there's something seriously wrong with a lot of women. There's something seriously wrong nowadays, and it's exactly why men are choosing to stay single. When I see the way a lot of women act, it's not at all relationship material. It was never like this when I was growing up in terms of, because of course we didn't have social media when I was at a younger age. But this whole idea of this image, purely about the image and about what other people think. They're in love with the phone. They're in love with the phone. It's about, what does this person, who, by the way, which this is something men figure out at a certain age, don't even care. They're focused on their own life, unless there's someone who has nothing productive going on. They don't care, okay, about this image. They don't care about your lip fillers. They don't care about your designer sunglasses. They don't care. They don't have time to care, okay? They're focused on their own mission and purpose. Now, you're someone who can be decent, or you're someone who can want to ruin men's lives and want to have some image that you're some queen. I even look at the body language. It's just there's nothing at all attractive about it. One of the last times that I'd seen a woman act truly in her feminine nature was a girl who was a foreign exchange student at the university I was at. I remember she had reached out to shake my hand, and I was like, yeah, that's how a woman should be acting. Just the body language, just, you guys know what I'm talking about. But the way I see a lot of women acting now, like they want to be this boss, they want to be this bad. The only thing you're bad at is bad relationship material. You're bad girlfriend material. You're not what you think you are. This image, it's just gone out of hand. Really has gone out of hand. And it's exactly why men are opting out. And I think will be just the end of dating if this continues, because everything just happens so fast, right? The past few years especially. Seems like it's happened so fast. It was never perfect, but it seems like these things happen so fast. I think it's why even things like the PlayStation 2 startup sound just bring us back to nostalgia and really a time where things weren't so all over the place. Yeah, divorce was still a thing. Yeah, it was never perfect. But what we have now is a joke. It's nothing short of it's unusual, right? I find it interesting. You even see a lot of people under 30 who are craving for a time that they did not even go through, right? 90s, which a lot of them were probably too young to remember. 80s, a time where they didn't live through. Tells you a lot. Like even I know in the city I'm in, things like vintage fashion, older movies, older video games are very popular. I think it goes to show people are craving a time where there wasn't something seriously wrong. At least not to the extent that it is now. So, as always, I appreciate you viewing the video. Hope you guys have a good one. Thank you.